Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Springhorn, and I work for the Department of Water Resources in our Sustainable Groundwater Management Office, and I'm part of the CASGEM team. Thank you all for being here this morning. We're really excited to share the latest information we have on the CASGEM program. We're going to wait a minute or so to make sure we have everyone get into the webinar. So just hold tight for a minute or two, and then we'll get going. And again, thank you for joining this morning. We're going to wait just a little bit longer to make sure we see everyone gets into the webinar. It's like the numbers are starting to stabilize a little bit. And we'll get going in just about 30 seconds. Okay. All right. I think it looks like we have critical mass here. And again, thank you all being here this morning for this CASGEM webinar. We're looking forward to sharing information. Again, if you didn't hear, my name is Stephen Springhorn with our DWR CASGEM team. And I'm joined today, if we could go to the next slide, by the rest of our CASGEM team and presenters today that are on the next slide, please. All right. So today, the presenters will be, we're joined by Atlee Keller and Rihanna Fossum from Stantec. They're helping orchestrate the webinar today. And then after that, we'll hear from a DWR colleague, Tad Bettigrew, and CASGEM lead, and then Priyanka Das, who's our lead CASGEM developer. We have a couple question and answer sessions today that we'll have. And so the presenters will be joined by other colleagues from DWR CASGEM team. That's Tom Luderman and Ariel DeMundo, and then Ben Gooding, who leads our DWR Sigma Portal Monitoring Network module. So we have a great group here to answer as many questions as we can. So we really encourage you to ask questions today, provide input, and it's really helpful as we're rolling out the new system that you'll see today and the new direction we're headed with the CASGEM program you'll hear more about today. And before we go on, I just wanted to highlight that our DWR regional offices, they're not presenting today, but they're online. And I just want to highlight that they're a tremendous resource and a critical part of the CASGEM program in our 4 regional offices in Red Bluff, West Sacramento, Fresno, and Glendale. So across the state, we have a team in each regional office that are CASGEM experts. They have the place-based knowledge and they're experts in groundwater monitoring. So I really encourage you to reach out to your DWR regional office, get to know them, and build that connection with the regional offices, because we all work together on the CASGEM program. All right, so next slide, please. So today's agenda, we'll go through a few more logistics to get things going to make sure you know how to participate today in the webinar. And then after that, I'll do a high-level overview of the CASGEM program, sort of where we've been, where we are now, and where we're headed. We're going to have a short Q&A after that overview. And then really the main event for the webinar is to have a detailed discussion on our new CASGEM online system. So we're really excited. The team's been working for years on this, and it's a big milestone for us, and we're excited to share the new online system with you. So it'll be a deep dive into that, demo of some of the new features and where to go to take a look at the new system and get help and guidance on how to use it. So, and then after that, we'll have a longer Q&A to answer any questions, remaining questions, or questions on all the content that we presented today. And then we'll close things out right around noon. So with that, if we could go to the next slide. And I'll pass it over to Atlee, and Atlee will go through how to participate today. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen, and good morning, everyone. As Stephen mentioned, my name is Atlee Keller. I'm with Stantec. I just want to run through a few of the logistical pieces for this morning. First, we've enabled closed captions, so you can go ahead and turn those on if you'd like. By clicking on your toolbar, you'll see either the CC option or under More, you can turn on closed captions. We also have the chat open, which I see you are all using, and you can use that to continue to share resources, links, and comments with your fellow attendees. If you are having any issues, you can go ahead and chat Brianna Fossum. She's marked as the co-host of this event, and she'll try to help you with any technical issues. Today, you'll have an opportunity to engage with our speakers, and you can do that by using the Q&A feature on your toolbar. So we'll have two opportunities for a question and answer, and you can go ahead and type your questions in the chat as they're coming up. You can also look at your fellow attendees' questions and upvote those so that we see where there's extra attention for questions that we should be addressing. And lastly, we are recording today's webinar. So if you missed something, don't worry, you can come back and revisit that recording on the CASGEM website. With that, I will pass it back to you, Stephen.
All right, thank you, Atlee. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide, please. And so what we wanted to do to start things out today is really hear from you and have an interactive opening here. So what we would like to do is really understand your interests of where you're currently collecting data or groundwater elevation data, or where you'd like to be collecting groundwater elevation data. Because as we know, of the 515 groundwater basins we see on the slide here, there's a huge variety and no two basins are the same. And we really need to continue to work together to collect as much information on our groundwater elevations as we can, because then we'll have the most information to bring together to tackle the tough challenges we face in the groundwater world. So what we wanted to do today, we have an interactive map that's going to pop up here in a second. And you can click on a dot on the map and just show where you are or where you're interested in collecting groundwater elevation data, or where you currently are collecting it now, just so we can see where we have people calling in from today. So it looks like, thank you for participating, and you can click once on there. So it looks like we've got good distribution in the Central Valley, the North Coast, South Coast. Nice. All right, everyone's starting to participate here. This is great. So yeah, we have North Coast, Central and South Coast. We've got out in the desert. Excellent. And then throughout the Central Valley, we have one in Nevada. So, or maybe that's the Central Coast on the little map. That's good. Maybe that's extra credit. All right. Northeastern California. Excellent. Okay, we'll give it about another minute, and we can of the survey. So if you haven't participated again, just click on the map of where you currently collect groundwater elevation data or would like to in the future. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up here in a few seconds, but this really shows, as I just mentioned, that California is so diverse in its groundwater resources and water resources, and there are so many different areas across the state that are important to all of you and the rest of the communities in California, environment and agriculture and other uses of groundwater. So as has been done for decades, a group effort to collect groundwater elevations across the state has been used and will continue to need to use that as we go forward with the CASGEM program. So excellent. So thank you for participating, and it's great we have such a great geographic distribution of you all on the call today. All right, so let's go back to the slides, please. Okay, so now, as mentioned, we're going to do a quick overview of the CASGEM program, sort of past, present, and future. So next slide, please. Okay, so before we get into the details of CASGEM, I just want to highlight some of the overall California's groundwater landscape. Many of you on this call know this very well, but it's worth noting and repeating that California's groundwater resources are so critical to our state. And we have 515 groundwater basins that cover 40% of the land area of California. And in those groundwater basins, those 515, over 20 million acre feet of groundwater are pumped. That's 94% of all groundwater pumped in the state. Over 80% of Californians live in these groundwater basins, over 30 million. And almost all of the irrigated agriculture, 7.5 million acres, are in these groundwater basins. So it's very important because of all this populations, the agricultural economy, communities, environment are all in these areas. We need to be able to monitor these effectively so we can manage this important resource. But it's worth noting also that there is groundwater that exists outside these 515 groundwater basins in our what we call non-basin areas. So you can see on the schematic at the bottom of the slide here, we have our defined groundwater basins, those 515 groundwater basins, but we also have the non-basin areas that make up more percentage of the state that are fractured rock or outside the groundwater basins. But there's still groundwater that exists. And although it doesn't account for a lot of, in percentage wise, of the amount of groundwater pumped, it really matters because there's a large population that lives in these non-basin areas that's distributed, but it's up to about 7 million Californians. It also accounts for 60% of the severely disadvantaged communities and disadvantaged communities in the state. And one thing that's really notable is that domestic wells, there's over 53% of all the domestic wells that have ever been drilled in California are drilled in these non-basin areas. So although there isn't a lot of pumping quantity-wise in these areas, the importance of groundwater resources in non-basin areas is paramount because of making sure that people have adequate drinking water and all of that. So just wanted to highlight sort of the differences between the areas in California, and CASGEM, as we'll talk about next, is really meant to cover and be able to monitor statewide groundwater elevations. Okay, next slide, please. So another thing to look at, and for context, is again, how does groundwater come out of the ground? It's with our groundwater infrastructure, our wells in the state. So this is a map showing of all these blue dots are the production wells in California. There's roughly 340,000 production wells that have been drilled, that have come in. Well completion reports have been come in to our Oscar database that DWR stewards. The breakdown of these wells, there's about 280,000 domestic wells that have been drilled over many decades, and about 60,000 agricultural wells. And you can see how they start to really highlight where the main uses are in the Central Valley, the coastal areas, the South Coast, in the mountain basins. But we also see that in the foothills and the upland areas that are the non-basin areas, you see there's a lot of wells there as well. So if we go to the next click, please. That has led into where groundwater exists, where it's used, and the population, the communities, the environment that rely on groundwater have led to a prioritization of groundwater. And the current prioritization is shown here in the different colors. And there's about 100 or 94 groundwater basins that were deemed medium or high priority. These are the basins, as you can see, where a lot of the agricultural wells, domestic wells are in. And these are the basins that are subject to SGMA. So these are the basins that, and we'll talk about the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, but these are where a lot of the action is happening in SGMA. But there's also all the rest of the basins. 421 groundwater basins are low or very low priority. And just because it's low or very low priority in the official statewide basin prioritization does not mean that these areas are not important. So there are many important environmental, community, agricultural needs in these areas. And so there's a high need to monitor and really expand out into these areas to monitor groundwater elevations more than we have in the past, and also the non-basin area too. So next slide, please. So getting into more of the details of what is CASGEM. So we have a lot of acronyms in the groundwater world, and CASGEM is one of them. It stands for California Statewide Groundwater Elevation Monitoring, or CASGEM program. Again, it is really meant to cover the entire state. And so it was created almost 15 years ago now, which time is flying, by a Senate bill that was in 2009 in one of our previous droughts. And there were groundwater elevations being collected in California. One fun fact is the earliest measurement we have in our database is back in the 1800s. And there's been groundwater monitoring going on since then. But really, CASGEM brought in the first statewide program, collective program, to collect groundwater elevations across the state in a standardized way, with collaborating and working with local monitoring entities, you on this call and many others across the state. And then for the effort or the benefit or objective to get that information publicly available. So you all can use it at the local level. There can be the members of the public can understand groundwater information in their neighborhood, regionally and statewide. So it's really important and has been a successful program so far. And before the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act passed, CASGEM was very focused in the high and medium priority basins because this is where a lot of the action was happening. But however, we know now that the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act passed, and that is a new part of the water code, a new requirement. But CASGEM remains part of the water code. And when SGMA came in, CASGEM was amended to make sure that SGMA fits in to the CASGEM process. So a SGMA groundwater sustainability agency is an official CASGEM monitoring entity type. So when the legislation was passed, there was this effort to stitch these two important programs together. So they're not overlapping, they're stitched together. And we'll talk more about that today. And so we are in this point of transition to meet this new regulatory environment or landscape that we see with SGMA here and some of the other things that have been gone on since 2009. But we're also, as we know, in a new climate landscape with extreme weather whiplash, as we've seen firsthand this last winter of extreme flood that followed extreme drought and dry. So it's just really evident that collecting groundwater elevation information is important, and it's going to continue to be important as we move forward in California groundwater management. And CASGEM has provided the data foundation for many of these initiatives: CASGEM, SGMA, groundwater management planning, groundwater sustainability planning, drought response, you name it, recharge, a lot of these important things that we're doing today collectively. So next click, please. So a little bit about the CASGEM timeline, a little bit more about that and where we've come from. After the law passed in 2010, it was really all hands on deck to get the word out, develop the program, work with you all at the local level, and build out the initial CASGEM online system, create some initial guidelines to standardize groundwater monitoring across the state, and work with you all at the local level to make that happen. That led to a lot of efforts around 2011 with notifications coming in to DWR. 325 monitoring entities were designated in that period of time, which was really great because it provided that statewide coverage of groundwater elevation monitoring. And then in 2012 is really where the rubber met the road with monitoring entities, as you know, beginning to collect and submit groundwater level data for CASGEM. And then 2015, in the heart of a very severe drought, the 2012 to 2016 drought, SGMA was passed, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And so that was another, like CASGEM was before it, SGMA was a major milestone in California's groundwater management and monitoring history. So next click. So with CASGEM being around and a legacy program, continued program, and then SGMA coming about, we really, over the last several years, have been working to bring these two worlds together to make sure that we avoid duplication between CASGEM and SGMA and make sure as smooth as possible transition from CASGEM to SGMA where it needed to happen. So again, a common misconception is that CASGEM is going away or is superseded by SGMA, but that's not the case. CASGEM is going to remain, and we'll talk about where we're headed with it next. SGMA will remain, and if we stitch them together to avoid duplication, and also most importantly, create a centralized statewide database so that wherever groundwater elevation information is coming in, it's coming to a centralized spot so that we can have it standardized and easily accessed, the latest and greatest information. So we called this, as it happened, the Great Migration. And we know many of you on this call went through that and really appreciate all the work that it took to reflect the new regulatory landscape. And so what that Great Migration really led to is over 100 notifications being closed. So the CASGEM chapter in that basin ended as the SGMA chapter opened up. But however, groundwater elevations continue to be collected and submitted through that transition. However, in all those basins that did not go on the SGMA track or weren't required to, CASGEM remains. And so we still have over 200 CASGEM monitoring entities or notifications. And these are really in the low and very low basins and basins with adjudicated areas. And so again, CASGEM is alive and moving in these areas where we're working these programs together. So as a reminder, SGMA entities, whether that's a groundwater sustainability agency, an alternative to a groundwater sustainability plan agency, those SGMA entities submit to the SGMA portal monitoring network module. And then all the CASGEM entities submit to the CASGEM online system that you'll hear more about today. But then as the schematic shows on the right, that regardless of where and for what program groundwater elevations come into be submitted for the state, it all goes into one funnel into what's called our Enterprise Water Management or EWM database. And so that's all statewide groundwater stations, all measurements are stored there, a centralized spot, which allows us to then share that on California Natural Resource Agency's open data portal, along with 20,000 other data sets and maps. So it can be connected to a lot of other things. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit more about the data flow. So as mentioned, there's a lot of different data streams, groundwater elevation being collected and reported. So as mentioned, CASGEM, we have the 200 monitoring entities. We have several hundred, over 1,000 wells that DWR monitors, that data comes in through CASGEM. And then we have over 250 groundwater sustainability agencies that are now submitting through the SGMA monitoring network module. We also are working and coordinating with our colleagues at the state board as they are working through some new legislation. And they've developed the Safer Clearinghouse that are collecting groundwater elevations from drinking water systems. We're working with them. And there's many other entities that collect and submit groundwater elevation data. And so next click, please. So by making sure that we have these standardized enterprise level databases, we're able to interoperate between these different program activities so that at the end of the day, next click, that all that goes into on the user side can be accessed very efficiently in one spot. And what we're doing is we're working across the state with our sister agencies and then federal agencies with the National Groundwater Monitoring Network and getting that data into the CNRA Open Data Platform. And what that allows us to do, next click, is make sure that there's standard data stream that can be used on downstream apps, such as statewide reports like California's Groundwater Bulletin 118, or interactive maps like California Groundwater Live, where the groundwater elevations that come in through CASGEM or Sigma then instantly are updated in these applications that can be used by more general audiences or more technical audiences like the Sigma Data Viewer, and then could also be connected to external data systems like a local data management system that have popped up, or academia, or local entities or land well owners that can get this information. So again, standardization is important because it allows us to share the information quickly and efficiently. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit more about where we are. As mentioned, the great migration from CASGEM to Sigma. Over 3,300 wells were migrated from CASGEM to Sigma's portal monitoring network module. 60% of the wells in the Sigma portal came from CASGEM. So it shows that CASGEM was this great foundation to build off of. 1,400 plus wells are still participating in the CASGEM program in those blue dots you see across the state. And then the Sigma wells are those red and orange dots that are actively working now. And collectively, those wells, along with others that come in for special projects or anything else, represents our statewide groundwater monitoring network. And so again, CASGEM is statewide. It has Sigma within it and other programs within it, and it's not going away. We're in fact going to be improving it and enhancing it, as we'll talk about next. So next slide. So where we're headed with CASGEM. So number one is we're going to make sure we maintain what we've got. So we want to make sure we continue to work with all of you as the CASGEM monitoring entities, make sure we have continued coordination with the Sigma world and the groundwater sustainability agencies so we can maintain the network we have. But in CASGEM specifically, now that Sigma is operating the GSAs, submitting groundwater elevation monitoring or data through the groundwater sustainability plans every year, we're going to be shifting the CASGEM focus to the low and very low basins, priority basins, and non-basin areas. So we can see we don't have a lot of wells right now in non-basin areas. There's maybe a handful, a couple hundred across the entire state, where we have 14,000 active wells in the basin, groundwater basins. So we are going to be, through pilot projects, going to be expanding out into these areas and engaging the local agencies that we can work with to, and local entities that we can work with to really build out the network. So, and then as we work with you all at the local level, we're going to be also working within DWR to enhance our DWR monitoring wells. So we're going to be increasing the number of sites we monitor and also be increasing the frequency that we monitor sites. So we're really going to try and lead by example by DWR, working with our regional offices to increase frequency of the wells we monitor to monthly is our goal. And then we're also building out our real-time groundwater level network. So we'll have stations that are real-time. And so this map on the right shows a recent snapshot of what is the statewide landscape of how frequent groundwater levels are measured. And so for the vast majority of the state, it's measured semi-annually. And that has been what CASGEM started with. And then that's what we have today. But we also see there's areas that are monitoring monthly. A lot of our regional offices are monitoring monthly. And we're starting to see more of those green dots popping up where we have weekly to bi-weekly measurements and even daily to continuous. So we're going to try and start to, and from DWR monitored wells, start to move from that orange to green, from semi-annual to monthly or to continuous, because we know that for the groundwater management that's needed to be done these days to handle the droughts, the floods, and everything else, we need operational data. And operational data is really higher frequency data. So that's where we're headed. And we're looking forward to working with you all to work on that. We know it's not going to be overnight, but we want to be working towards that goal. And while we do that, we want to be continuing to improve our data standards and interoperability again with Sigma. And as always, as a fundamental principle, is have easy access to the information. Next slide, please. So one last slide here on where we're headed next. Again, maintaining and enhancing the statewide groundwater monitoring network. That's going to necessitate continuing to build on our existing relationships we have with you all as CASGEM monitoring entities, SGMA groundwater sustainability agencies, and other related entities, but also looking for new partnerships and pilot efforts with non-governmental organizations or agencies. Community monitoring and education is going to be really important for those individual well owners to be able to participate. And we have some now that we're working with, which is really exciting, that they're taking it upon themselves. And they know the importance of their water supply and in order to monitor their wells. We have homeowner associations, different monitoring groups. So we're going to really try to be building through pilot studies and efforts and outreach that community monitoring in CASGEM. And then we're also going to be continuing to coordinate with our sister agencies and federal agencies to work on new legislation that's been coming in, Senate Bill 552, which was focused on drought and some other efforts that the department and the state board are working on. And this is where groundwater levels are coming from public water systems. And so we're coordinating closely with the state board SAFER program and drought program. So we'll continue that, and we're continuing to integrate with the U.S. Geological Survey's National Groundwater Monitoring Network, so we can share what's happening in California with the rest of the nation. So it's exciting times. We have dedicated funding to do this, to keep it going and scale it up. Next slide. So my last slide here is really just to showcase, and Tad and Priyanka and others will go into more of this, but if you're interested in looking at the latest CASGEM information, there's 3 primary spots to go. Number one, the CASGEM webpage on DWR's webpage. You'll find CASGEM background information, frequently asked questions that have been recently updated, fact sheets, other CASGEM resources, and most importantly, again, regional office contacts. And those are there listed on the right side of that page. And really, again, encourage everyone to get to know your regional lead and the DWR regional offices. They have a lot of great information and expertise. The other thing you'll hear a lot more today and here in a second is the CASGEM online system. This is where you will go to submit your CASGEM data. There's some new features that allow you to analyze and take a look at and filter the data that's in there, and new map application that's there, some other bells and whistles that Tad and Priyanka will talk more about next. And then finally, we have our CASGEM open data page that houses a lot of the user guides that you'll hear about today, other CASGEM documents. So these are the 3 primary resources. But always know that if you have questions, we do have this CASGEM email. It goes to the people that are involved, you'll hear from today, and the CASGEM team. So as you have questions, please reach out to this CASGEM email, and we're in coordination with our regional offices, and we'll get you the best answer we can for the information you need. Okay, with that, that concludes the overview of the CASGEM program. And now, really looking forward to the question and answer session. As mentioned, please put your questions in the question and answer box. It's different from the chat box, as Atlee mentioned. So we're going to try and answer as many questions as we can today. But if we don't get to your question, you can email that casgem@water.ca.gov, and we'll get back to you if we can't answer your question today. So again, go ahead and keep asking questions. We'll have another Q&A after the next segment too. So we got a couple questions here. So we have a question that is, why have groundwater levels not been monitored in the Sierra Nevada if most of the Central Valley water comes from there? Very good question. And that gets to where we're trying to build out the CASGEM network in the non-basin areas. Historically, all the requirements for groundwater elevation monitoring have been in the groundwater basins themselves. So that's really led to why the data is being collected and submitted for just the groundwater basins, or largely the groundwater basins. That's not to say that groundwater elevations are not collected out in the non-basin areas, but there hasn't been requirements for it to be submitted to the state and show up in our statewide databases. So it might be out there, but we don't have it. It hasn't been submitted. But again, that is a goal for our future growth in CASGEM, is to be working with communities, well owners in these non-basin areas to build capacity and get data collected and flowing in from these really important fractured rock areas. Great question. Okay, we've got another question. In one of the figures that was shown, that was monitored at various frequencies, it looked like the seasonal low was often in July, not October, when semi-annual measurements are traditionally done. Is there a thought to switch the timing of CASGEM low period measurements to July to better capture those lows in wells that are only monitored twice a year? Yeah, this is an excellent question, and really goes to the heart of where we want to go next with CASGEM, as I mentioned, increasing frequency. And so if we can go back a couple of slides, I can show that figure. It's one of the CASGEM future slides. And if not, I'll just explain it. So it really, yeah, a couple more slides right there. Yep. Okay, so as you can see, the orange line here is semi-annual measurements. So that gives you spring and fall. But as mentioned earlier, the variability from one basin to another, or even one part of a single basin to another, it varies tremendously. So you might have differences in pumping areas or groundwater level declines or increases across a basin, and definitely across basins in the state. So with increasing groundwater monitoring frequency, we're able to see where those actual seasonal lows and seasonal highs are. And so that's where DWR regional offices, as we continue to build out CASGEM, they're doing that right now. So they have, in many wells that our DWR regional offices collect, they've gone to monthly, and they're sharing that information with the well owners or the entities that have those wells that they're monitoring. And so we're working with those areas to share the information, this higher frequency data, to really highlight where are the new or changing seasonal highs or lows. So that is happening now. And as mentioned, we're going to be working more to get monthly data in the wells that DWR monitors, and then also increasing in some areas real-time monitoring. So we'll get up to daily measurements in certain areas. So great question. So there'll be more to come on that one. Okay, so another question, a big issue for domestic well users is how is the private information location managed in CASGEM? How do you all address the issue with domestic well owners? Great question, and this is going to be at the heart of how we build out CASGEM in the low and very low basins and non-basin areas. Now, I'll for the technical answer to that, I'll pass that over to Tad Pettigrew for how the personal information or private information is handled in CASGEM.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Hi, everybody. My name is Tad Pettigrew. I'm a senior engineering geologist in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office. And as far as how the private information or location information is managed within CASGEM, I would say that CASGEM is a voluntary program. So it really depends on the private well owner on how accurate they would like the well to be placed on map, or within the state. And that's a really good question, because it is important to know that all of the groundwater information that is submitted to CASGEM is made public. We do not make public well owners or addresses available through CASGEM, but really it depends on what the private well owner prefers to share. And if you have additional questions on that, please send us an email and we can connect you with our local region office to answer more specific questions on this topic.
All right, thank you, Tad. Okay, next question here. We got great questions rolling in, so keep putting them in. And if we don't have time to answer them in this question and answer session, the next question and answer session after Tad and Priyanka talk about the online system, we'll keep it going. Okay, so as the sole GSA for our groundwater basin, we find that we are doing double duty with uploads to both the Sigma portal and CASGEM portal. I understand that DWR merges the data. We're wondering if there is a way that we could upload all the data in one portal as opposed to two separate processes. Thanks. Yeah, so great point that, we haven't figured out all the bugs yet, and there's certain cases where groundwater agencies like yourself here are having to submit in two spots. So that's something that we can take on a case-by-case basis, and I'll pass it over to Tad to see if you want to add anything else on the double reporting and trying to reduce the duplication.
Sure. Yeah, I would like to just say that the CASGEM program, it's where we store the voluntary data for groundwater elevation information. And in the Sigma portal, these are wells associated with GSPs. And as most folks probably know, GSPs or the wells in the Sigma portal have regulatory requirements. So in order for the department to manage that data at the moment, we have the two different portals. But like Stephen said, that's something that we are interested in navigating. And as you know, when we have a solution to this, we will definitely share that. But we definitely understand that question and that concern.
All right, thank you, Tad. Yeah, and the key there is, reach out and please email that casgem@water.ca.gov, and we can handle and provide additional details on that. Okay. All right, next question. We've got a couple more minutes on this Q&A, and then we're going to move on to the next component of the webinar. We have another Q&A coming. Due to changes in our monitoring network over time, our local office has requested that we update our CASGEM monitoring plan. Are there any changes to the requirements of the monitoring plans? Are there changes to classifications of wells and/or monitoring densities, voluntary versus non-voluntary wells? Good question about the process going forward. Tad, you want to cover that one?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So there are no changes to the requirements of monitoring plans, and we do recognize that there are instances where monitoring plans are probably out of date. A lot of these plans were submitted in 2010, 2011, or 2012, and naturally there's changes to monitoring networks. And so there's also no changes to the classification of the wells or the densities or the monitoring frequency at the time. I would say if your office is looking into updating your CASGEM monitoring plan, please reach out to your local DWR region office. We have templates that we can help you with to streamline the process to update your CASGEM monitoring.
All right, thank you, Tad. Okay, another question here related to how CASGEM can or is operating or coordinating with another big state program. So here's a question about, as far as the SAFER or Safe and Affordable program report is concerned, since CASGEM reporting is twice annually and SAFER reporting is monthly, do you think the CASGEM report will be incorporated into the SAFER report? More specifically, will the SAFER report be able to feed the CASGEM requirements? Yeah, great question. Again, this is another thing, like we've been trying to avoid duplication between two DWR-led efforts as far as data submittal, CASGEM and Sigma. This is where we're working with our sister agency, the State Board, with their SAFER program, and that's relatively new, and it's really ramping up. So to answer that question right now is we're continuing to coordinate with the State Board. We're going to understand and work with them to see what's possible. But as it stands right now, CASGEM monitoring entities will need to continue to report their information to the CASGEM online system that you'll see today. And SAFER will need to report to the SAFER clearinghouse. And we're trying to work to see how that will work going forward. but we are going to be stitching the data together on the backside so that when we'll have one statewide data set of all groundwater stations and elevations, because we've been working with this SAFER team for a couple years now to really make that work. So stay tuned on that as the specific requirements. And if you want to send an email to us about that, we can provide additional details as we get them with our work from the state board. Okay, we're going to do one more question. And then we're going to turn it over to Tad to go over the new online system. Okay, so when considering a new well in the CASGEM program, is having the well drillers report an essential requirement? Or could a well still provide valuable information even if we don't have well information or well screens preparations? Many landowners I have reached out to have older wells with no well drillers reports available. Yeah, great question, because this is a very common, as you're saying, common occurrence. So Tad, do you want to cover that one?
Sure. Yeah, I want to start with saying that the well does definitely still provide valuable information, and the well driller's report is not a requirement. It is certainly preferred if we have that information, but we recognize that a lot of times, like in your question, that information is not available. We don't want the lack of well construction information to prevent folks from participating in CASGEM or submitting voluntary data, and collecting data from those wells is still important because perhaps the well construction information could be obtained in the future.
Okay, thank you, Tad. And yeah, there's a lot of great questions still in the queue. So we're going to try and answer as many as we can in our next Q&A session. And again, as mentioned, you can always email us at casgem@water.ca.gov if we aren't able to answer your question today. Okay, with that, I'll pass it over to Tad to go over the new online system.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Next slide, please. All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Tad Pettigrew, and I work in the Department of Water Resources Sustainable Groundwater Management Office. I would like to officially announce that the new CASGEM online system has been released today. This means that the next time users navigate to the CASGEM online system, they will be using the updated version that we'll be demonstrating during today's webinar. If users have bookmarked the previous version of the CASGEM online system, you should be automatically redirected to the new system. In some cases, bookmarked URLs may not be redirected, but at the end of this webinar, we will provide a direct link to the new CASGEM online system. During this portion of today's webinar, my colleague Priyanka and I will discuss some of the key features and provide a demonstration on how to navigate the updated version of the CASGEM online system. Next slide, please. The key topics we'll be covering today include our phased approach to rolling out the new version of the CASGEM online system, the public user experience, the registered user experience, such as a collection organization, upcoming features of the CASGEM online system, which will be part of phase 2, and we will have time at the end of the demonstrations to answer questions. Next slide, please. I will start with briefly describing the phased rollout approach to the updated CASGEM online system. The features you will be seeing today during this webinar are included in our phase 1 rollout. As you'll see today, the CASGEM online system has been redesigned and modernized to enhance the user interface and experience, provide easier access for public users, and includes a new data import process for users who are registered in our system and upload groundwater information. We are currently planning our phase 2 release, which I will revisit later during this webinar. Now that I have covered the key topics you will see during this portion of the webinar, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Priyanka to introduce the enhanced public user experience.
Thank you, Tad. Good morning, everyone. My name is Priyanka Das. I'm working as a developer on the CASGEM application, and today I'm going to talk about the public user experience. The following you see here are the key features of our new system. First is the improved layout of the user interface. Second is no login required to access data. And third is the availability of online guides. Now, I would like to demo what we just discussed. Let us navigate to the new CASGEM online system. All right, here we are on the CASGEM homepage. The navigation bar on the top is standard across all the pages, and it is one of the frequently used features. You can also navigate to the key point of interest in our system by clicking on any of these cards, and hovering over them will give you a quick summary. For example, Welcome to the CASGEM online system card navigates to the page where all the important CASGEM updates are listed. And towards the end, you will see the statistics that show quick summary of data in our system. For example, first is the count of total elevation readings in the system, and next is number of organizations that collect the elevation readings. Let us now navigate to the wells page to check the new additional layout. Here we are on the wells page. Please notice that I was not required to log in to access the wells data. The layout of the grid and detail will allow you to see the data quickly. All the available wells in the CASGEM online system are listed in the wells grid. Let us first talk about the grid features. The global search bar that you see here searches through the large amounts of data. Now I'm going to search for a well located in Amador County. You can also search with other geographic filters, such as region office, basin, or if you know local well name or state well number, it will try finding matching records for you. Please be patient as the system retrieves the matching data from the 46,000 wells. The wells grid now displays the results of your grid search. It will also update total number of records retrieved. As you see here, there are 23 matching records. Before going into the detail, I would like to focus your attention on another important functionality, that is the help button. This opens the wells guide in a separate tab. And this document will help understanding of a new user interface as it elaborates on all new functionalities along with column header and definitions. Now let us go back to the wells page. And I'm going to select a well with local well name, WWA well 3, for example. Please notice the information about the well will appear in the well detail on the right, and the site code for the well selected appears on the header. Let us now go through a few sections. Along with the site code, other unique names of the well, such as local well name, state well number, are listed in the identification section. Next is the location section. This displays the location of well within California. Third one is the data collection information section. This has a list of organizations that collect elevation readings for the well. If you want to see the readings collected by Amador County for this selected well, then you can click on the date hyperlink under the latest reading column. Here we are on the elevation readings page. As you see, this page also has a grid and a detail layout similar to the wells page. Elevation reading grid displays readings that were recorded for a well. Let us now talk about the grid features. You can view hydrograph by clicking on the hydrograph button, and a hydrograph is a visual representation of elevation readings. Now let us go back. We also have a help button here that opens elevation readings page. Now I'm going to select a reading for measurement date, October 23rd, 2018. Okay. So please notice that the reading detail shows information about the measurement, and the header displays the calculated values based on the submitted readings. For example, when a selected row is a groundwater measurement, it is displayed under the reading type. A groundwater elevation is elevation of groundwater above sea level. GS to WS is distance in feet from the ground surface to the water surface. RP to WS is a distance from reference point to water surface. This is all about the elevation readings grid. Features that are planned for phase 2 include notifications, reports, and the map viewer. If you need further help with the phase 2 release, you can click on the help link to check out additional resources. Okay, here we are on the help page. The first important card you see on the help page is the CASGEM guides. That opens a link to all the CASGEM documentation like guides, frequently asked questions, and other important documents. Another useful feature is send us a comment card. Use this to ask us questions about CASGEM online system or send us feedback to improve the site. This concludes our public user demo. Now I will be handing off to Tad Berigru to introduce registered users.
All right, thank you, Priyanka. If we can switch back to the slides, we can continue. Thank you. We will now be transitioning to the navigation of available features as a registered user, such as a collection organization. At this point, I would like to remind everyone that everything you have seen so far that Priyanka has demonstrated is for public users, which are no longer required to log in or create an account. In this portion of the webinar, I will discuss and demonstrate some key features as a registered user, which include the improved layout, which is expanding on what Priyanka has already shown us, the organization wells page, and the data import page of the redesigned CASGEM online system. We will now pull up the updated CASGEM online system and begin the demonstration as a registered user. Registered users will log into the system using the sign-in box located on the far right-hand side of the navigation bar, using an email and password. If you are a registered user, such as a collection organization, this is how you would access the system. It is important to note that the email and password combination registered users used for the previous version of the CASGEM online system will also be used to log into this updated version. Once you have signed into the system, you will see your name in the upper right-hand corner in the blue sign-in box. The sign-in box contains the name of the user, their user role type, and the organization they are associated to. In this demonstration, the user's name is John Smith, who is an administrator for the Webinar Water Agency. You will also see additional options that were also present in the previous version of the system, which are the user profile, change password, associate organization, and sign out button. Now that we are logged in as John Smith, the first thing that is seen is a My Queue section on the homepage that includes a grid of data imports. I will describe the data import process in more detail later in this demonstration and revisit the My Queue section at that time. However, it is important to note that for convenience, the My Queue section will be one of the first things you see on the homepage once you log in. Registered users will also see some additional navigation buttons across the navigation bar, which include the organization wells, data import, and administration buttons. Now we will explore some of these tabs along the navigation bar that are available to registered users. First, John will click on the Organization Wells tab. The name of his organization is displayed across the top of the grid, which also includes the number of wells that are associated to his organization. Similar to what Priyanka has shown us, a grid of John's wells will be displayed on the left side of the page, along with the well details for the selected well on the right side of the page. It is important to note that the wells you see in this grid are the same wells you were associated to when you logged into our previous version of the CASGEM online system. Registered users will see additional features available, such as the blue Well Directory button, a yellow Edit Well button on the right, date hyperlinks that are blue in the latest reading column within the grid, and a green Add Reading button in the grid if the well does not have any readings. We will revisit some of these buttons shortly, but John will now add a first reading to a well by navigating to the elevation readings page by clicking on the green Add Reading button for a particular well. On the elevation readings page, the grid on the left is empty since no elevation readings have been added to this well. To add reading to this well, the user must populate the Add New Reading fields on the right side of the page. It is important to note that the information required to successfully add a reading to the new system are the same fields you were asked to populate in our previous version of the CASGEM online system. In the header of the Add New Reading page, the user will see a Cancel, Save, and Help button. The Cancel button redirects the user to the Organization Wells page, and the reading will not be saved. The Save button will save the reading. If users need help populating the Add New Reading page, the Help button could be selected, which will open a specific user guide that contains step-by-step instructions on how to add a new reading. In the CASGEM online system, there are two reading types, a groundwater measurement and a no measurement reading. The system defaults to a groundwater measurement reading type, which then displays the fields associated to a reading. If the user selects the No Measurement radio button, only the fields associated to a no measurement reading will be displayed. However, John will demonstrate how to successfully add a groundwater measurement reading for this well. John will ensure that the groundwater measurement radio button is selected. Please note that the measurement date and measurement time are populated with defaults from the system to the current date and the nearest 30-minute time window. However, the user can select a date and time from the drop-downs. So John will now select a measurement date and a measurement time. Then he will select a measurement method and measurement accuracy from the drop-downs. Next, John will enter a value in the reading at reference point and reading at water surface fields. You will notice that once the reading at reference point and reading at water surface fields are populated, the system will automatically calculate and display the groundwater elevation, ground surface to water surface, and reference point to water surface values. The questionable measurement code and comments fields are optional. For demonstration purposes, John will select a questionable measurement code, but leave the comment box empty. For this demonstration, John will now click on the Save button. Once John clicks the Save button, the system will display a green banner message near the sign-in box informing the user that the save was successful. Now that we have successfully added a reading, John will now briefly show you how to edit a reading. John will now go back to the Organization Wells page and locate a well that needs an elevation reading edit. To access the elevation readings page for a particular well, John will click on the blue date hyperlink under the latest reading column. For this well, the grid on the left has several rows which indicate that multiple readings have been added for this well. John will now select a row for a reading he would like to edit. With the row selected, he can edit the reading by clicking on the yellow Edit Reading button on the right side of the page. Once the Edit button is selected, the Edit Reading header becomes yellow, indicating that this reading can be modified. Also, the user will now see additional buttons such as Cancel, Delete, Save, and Help. The Cancel button will close the Edit Reading page, and the Delete button will remove this elevation reading. The Save button will save the edits. As mentioned previously, a guide specific to editing a reading can be found by clicking on the Help button. In this example, John will delete a reading by clicking on the red Delete button. The system will prompt the user asking if they are sure they want to delete the reading. John will enter a comment and then click on OK. A green banner message will be displayed in the navigation bar informing John that the delete was successful. Next, we will describe how to add a new well to the CASGEM online system. To add a well, John must go back to the Organization Wells tab on the navigation bar. On the Organization Wells page, John will click on the blue Well Directory button once this page loads. Once this page loads, the grid will display all of the wells that exist in the CASGEM online system. Please note that this screen may take some time to load, as there are over 46,000 well records in the CASGEM online system. Once John has confirmed that the well he would like to add does not already exist in the system, he will click on the green Add Well button. The page will load the Organization Wells grid on the left, along with the Add New Well page on the right. I'd like to pause here to remind people, and I've mentioned this several times, that the Help button on these pages will navigate you to a guide that is specific to helping you navigate the current page that you're on in the system. To add a well to his organization, John would populate the Add New Well fields on the right side of the page. However, during this demonstration, we will not be adding a well, since the system interaction is similar to adding a new reading. However, on the Add New Well page, the first section contains the required information for adding a new well, which includes fields such as local well name, coordinates, and elevation information. Below the required information section, you will see two additional sections that are optional. These sections contain fields for construction information, such as total depth and perforation intervals, and miscellaneous details, such as a well location description and comments. Similar to adding a reading, the user will see an option to cancel, clear, or save the entries. John will now click on the red Cancel button. Now that we have described how to add a well, we will briefly show you how to edit a well. John is now on the Organization Wells page and will navigate to a well he would like to edit and select that row. With the well selected, the user will see a yellow Edit Well button on the right-hand side of the well detail page. When John clicks on that Edit Well button, the fields in this page can be modified. During this demonstration, we will not actually edit the well, as the system handles well edits similar to adding a reading or adding a well. Instead, John will click on the Cancel button, which will close the Edit Well page. Now we will focus on the data imports portion of the demonstration by having John click on the Data Imports tab in the navigation bar. The Data Import page is where registered users can batch import wells or groundwater elevation readings, similar to how users imported this information in our previous version of the CASGEM online system. I would like to pause here to recognize that most registered users likely use the batch import process to upload groundwater elevation data. I'd like to highlight this portion of the demonstration, as the import process is different than the previous version of the CASGEM online system and includes many enhancements, as you will see shortly. Similar to previous screens in the new CASGEM online system, the registered user will see a grid on the left side of the data imports page, and on the right side of the page, you will see the import details. In the header of the data import page, users will see a green Add Import button and a Help button. In the header of the import detail page, users will see buttons for Delete Import, Edit Import, and Submit Import. It is important to note that the Submit Import button will not be enabled unless all errors are resolved, which we will revisit shortly. In the grid on the left, in chronological order, John will see two types of data imports, wells and elevation readings in the import type column. The status column displays a variety of different import statuses. As you can see, John has previously successfully imported wells and elevation readings, but also has an import that is ready to import and an import that contains errors. For each row in the grid, the import detail page on the right contains detailed information regarding import, such as the total records, how many records have failed or passed, the current status of the import, and other information such as the import date, the import type, and the name of the user performing the import. With the first record in the grid selected, we see that this import contains errors. In this example, John forgot to review the user guide to assist in populating the elevation readings import template, and all 12 records have failed. Rather than using the system to correct each of these errors, John will delete the import by clicking on the red Delete Import button. The system will then prompt John and ask him to confirm that he would like to delete this import. Once John clicks yes, the import will successfully be deleted from the grid and the system. John now believes that he has fixed his latest elevation reading template and will now try to add the elevation readings import again by clicking on the green Add Import button. You will now see an Add Import job open on the right-hand side of the page. Users will have two types of data imports to choose from: elevation readings or wells, along with a Download Import Template link that will download the corresponding template. It is important to note that the Excel files used for imports in our previous version of the CASGEM online system will not work in the updated system. Users must download a new template and use this new format to successfully import wells and groundwater elevation data. I would like to remind registered users to click on the Help button to open a guide that is specific to populating the new import templates. John will now show an example of the old batch import spreadsheet. This older spreadsheet has orange headers in each column. In this example, this is a spreadsheet that John used to import fall 2022 groundwater elevation readings. Again, this format of the spreadsheet will no longer work in our updated CASGEM online system. Instead, John will now show the new template that is used in our new system. In this example, this template has been already populated with fall 2023 groundwater elevation readings. The new template that users will use in the updated CASGEM online system has blue column headers with red text indicating required fields. To import these groundwater elevation readings, John will now navigate back to the CASGEM online system and ensure that the elevation reading radio box is selected within the Add Import job page. Next, John will click on the light blue Select File button to navigate to the spreadsheet he has already populated and select that file for the import. The user will see the file name along with a Clear and Upload button. John will click on the Upload button. An Upload Progress banner will briefly display near the top of the page near the sign-in box. The system will load the import, and you will now see the elevations reading import page with a grid of elevation readings on the left and edit import reading on the right side of the page. At this point in the import process, the data has not yet been submitted to the system and is in this staging area. In the staging area, you can review the data you would like to submit, edit the data, and/or fix errors that the system has identified with your import. In this demonstration, row number 5 displays a red warning icon indicating that there's an error related to this record. John will select this row to view the error. The system identifies fields with errors with a red outline on the field entry box and a yellow message below the field with information regarding the error. Globally, the new online system will handle all validation errors with the same visual cue of a red outline with a yellow message box. In this example, the site code was not provided. The site code that should have been entered is the same site code as row 4. So John will select row 4 and copy the site code. Then select row 5. Click on the site code dropdown and paste the site code into the search. Then John can select the correct site code. With the site code selected, the validation error message and red box will disappear. John will now click on the Save button and see that the red warning icon that was in row 5 is now a green check mark, indicating that the errors have been resolved. Now, John can click on the blue Submit Import button that has been enabled. The system will provide a success banner message in the navigation bar, and you will see in the grid that the import has a success status. Users will also see another avenue for submitting imports that have a ready to import status, such as another import within this grid. Users can submit the import by selecting the blue Submit Import button on the import detail page. On the right there, yep. To demonstrate this, John will click on the blue Submit Import button that has a ready to import status and see that the status is now changed to success. We will end this portion of the demonstration with John navigating back to the My Queue grid by clicking on the Home tab within the navigation bar. As mentioned near the beginning of this demonstration, the My Queue section containing imports will be one of the first things that users will see when they log into the new CASGEM online system. The My Queue of imports are placed here for convenience, since data imports will likely be used frequently. This concludes the new CASGEM online system demonstration, and we will now go back to our presentation slides. The items covered during today's demonstrations highlighted items released during phase 1 of our rollout. The upcoming features that we plan to release will be phase 2 enhancements that include a streamlined notifications process, which are submitted by monitoring entities, enhanced reports developed by the new system, a revised interactive map, and an enhanced administration tab to manage organizations. Next slide, please. This concludes this portion of the webinar, and I will now hand it over to my colleague, Stephen Springhorn, to navigate additional questions that have been submitted.
All right. Thank you, Tad and Priyanka, for going through that. All right, so we have questions queued up here. So I will just go through and keep reading them off, and we'll answer again as many as we can. We have a good chunk of time to be answering questions here. So please keep putting them in the chat. Okay, so we will start with a question about how does a California state agency that is not related to water resources, but owns and operates supply wells, sign up to start reporting water levels to CASGEM? So great question, and appreciate the interest. And because again, we're trying to grow the network. So all new members are really important to get in the system. I think it really depends on this specific question about the specific situation or basin that you're in. So if there's a groundwater sustainability agency that has been formed in the basin, or a CASGEM entity that already has been formed in the basin, you would want to coordinate with them first to see what might happen there. But then if there isn't anyone that's already signed up for groundwater monitoring, you could become a CASGEM entity. But either way, either case, we can help you navigate that. And that's another great example of our DWR regional offices helping the organizations and agencies in their region navigate those case-by-case situations to figure out the best path forward. So again, I would reach out to any GSA or CASGEM entity that already exists in the basin, and then also to our region, to your regional office contact, CASGEM contact, which can be found on our CASGEM homepage, as well as you can email the casgem@water.ca.gov, and we can put you in touch with who your representative is. Okay. Next question. How can we volunteer to participate in pilot studies to collect higher frequency data? Well, I'd say this is music to our ears because this is exactly where we want to go. So I appreciate your willingness to look into more of the details. I think the best next step on that, and if for anyone who's interested in participating in some of our pilots, please email the casgem@water.ca.gov with the specifics about the monitoring that's possible, some of the details of where you're located, that kind of thing, and that'll help us working with region offices dial in if a pilot is possible. So please reach out to us on that. And looking forward to talking more about that. Okay, so another question. This is a good data question about will the water data library be continued and how will it relate to CASGEM? Good question about there's a lot of different places to get groundwater elevation information. And so again, we're trying to standardize how it gets collected, submitted, and goes into one spot, but there's a variety of ways to access the authoritative data once it's in one spot. So this is an example of that, where the water data library will continue to exist. The team that has recently made some updates to the water data library is the same team that works on the CASGEM program. So there's good familiarity and continuity there. So the water data library will still exist going forward. And it really represents just another way to look at the data that is in the DWR's enterprise water management database. So all the data that comes from CASGEM, all the data that comes from Sigma and the DWR regional office data, all of that can be viewed on the water data library. Okay, so another question. This one gets into what Tad, you and Priyanka were talking about. Will there be any changes to required data upload formats, well information, etc., for monitoring entities? Want to cover that one?
Sure. I believe this will answer your question. If not, please send an email to the casgem@water.ca.gov. But the required data, the information that we're requiring to upload well information and readings has not changed at all. What has changed is the format of the batch imports. So that again, the old batch imports, if you use that process, those Excel files will not work in our new system. And the information from those spreadsheets can be transferred to the new format in our new online system. And again, if you need help navigating that specific item, we have guides that can help you with that. So the required information hasn't changed. It's just the format has changed with the imports.
All right, thank you, Tad. Okay, so we'll keep going here. Here's another question about interoperating with some other state agency data sets. So the question is, data is also being uploaded into GeoTracker as GeoWell type files for monitoring wells. Are you also pulling these files for your database? So we're currently not interoperating with GeoTracker. And so GeoTracker monitoring well information does not show up in our enterprise water management database. However, we are in conversations with the state board data team, to see what is possible there. And we are sharing our respective data on our respective mapping applications. So we do have Gamma or GeoTracker data on our DWR Sigma data viewer, and then the Gamma groundwater information system that they have, which is a nice tool, also has our CASGEM and Sigma data on that. So we're trying to share. So if you're on one of those mapping applications, you can see what's available, but right now we don't have the GeoTracker monitoring well data in our CASGEM or Sigma database. Okay. Next question. When does DWR expect the USGS National Groundwater Monitoring Network integration to occur? And then there's additional parts of the question about the person asking the question funds USGS to collect water levels throughout the service area on different frequencies, and they post it on their webpage. And so they think it's helpful if CASGEM could utilize the USGS NWIS data for compliance rather than having to submit water levels to CASGEM. So I know the USGS, they do a lot of this type of monitoring. So this is a great question. So for the timeline, I was able to check in with another one of our Sigma data team members, and within about 2 months, we're planning to have the first wells connected into the National Groundwater Monitoring Network. It's going to be a phased approach. So we're going to start with a few wells and then make sure those connections work and then move forward as we go. So it's going to take some time on a rolling basis. And then to the second part of the question, I would encourage you to email us, and we can have, that's going to be sort of a more detailed discussion about once that connection's made to the National Groundwater Monitoring Network, how that would work for CASGEM data submittal. So we can talk more about that at a future time. Okay, so here's a question about building out local groundwater monitoring networks, which we really support. And this is, as a county, Napa, it is incredibly difficult to recruit private well owners. I have been denied several times by residents, domestic wells, and irrigators who do not see a benefit for allowing us to monitor their well. Can you talk about the strategies you all use to recruit private well owners? Do you emphasize the benefits they provide to the county and state, or pitch the benefits the well owner receives from knowing their static water levels twice a year? Great question. And it is something that we hear a lot about, so you're not alone. And the region offices work very closely with many domestic well owners for their networks that DWR monitors wells. And so there's a lot of knowledge about tips, tricks, incentives, and different ways to share the data that's being collected so the well owner sees the value. And so I would encourage you to reach out to our contacts at the North Central Region office, and the key contact there is Bill Brewster. Again, that's something that you could talk with the region offices, and we can help as well in headquarters to share as much information as we can to build the network collectively. I would just say from the recent drought periods we've had, there's been a large sort of more focused attention on the value of well owners having groundwater level information, because there's been a lot of dry wells that have occurred throughout the state. And so that it's been very impactful to many communities and many well owners themselves. And that's really galvanized their understanding of needing to know more about how they get their water that comes out of their tap. So I think at those moments of severe need, if there's a well that goes dry, there's been opportunities to say, okay, there's state ways to help with temporary water, but there's also longer term educational opportunities to then say, hey, once your well comes back online, if it does, then here's a way to monitor it. And here's ways that can happen. So I think we've been seeing more people wanting to become groundwater level data collectors in recent years with drought conditions. specifically. Okay, so let's see. Another one about interoperability. It would be great for GSA designees in Safer Clearinghouse to see the monthly static water levels for the entities that are required to upload to Safer. We could use this data to supplement data gaps we have in static well coverages across the subbasin. That is a good point, and that is something that we will share with our colleagues at the State Board. We have repeated technical coordination calls with them, standing calls and coordination. So we will share that with them and see what's possible there. And if you have other ideas on similar things with connecting our systems with other state agency systems, or things that you all as the reporting community have to submit to different state agencies, we're all ears on ways that you feel how to streamline. So send us your input, your feedback, what's working well, what's not working well, and we can share that as we talk with our board and other state agency technical teams. Okay, so another question on interoperability: will the CASGEM or California Natural Resource Agency open data also include groundwater levels from irrigated lands regulatory program? At the moment, no, they don't include those measurements unless they've been incorporated as part of a CASGEM monitoring plan or a groundwater sustainability monitoring network. But at the moment, we don't have the ILRP or irrigated lands regulatory program measurements in, but it's something that we've been talking with the board technical teams about. Okay, next question: can the database sort the data for wells that are no longer monitored and those that are actively being monitored? Being able to sort those wells would help. Tad, can you answer that one?
Sure. At the moment, the database does not have the ability to sort the data for wells that are no longer being monitored. Perhaps that's good feedback for some reporting functionality we can add to the CASGEM program. However, I would like to point you to the Sigma Data Viewer, where the Sigma Data Viewer, and we can follow up with you on this question. The Sigma Data Viewer displays both data from the CASGEM program and the Sigma Portals Monitoring Network module. And there's more filters on there where you can filter by date or other sorting capabilities.
Thank you, Tad. Okay, another data-related question coming to you, Tad. Is there a download data button in the public section of the new online system? How do you download a spreadsheet of water levels in spreadsheet format on the new website?
Yeah, good question. Again, this relates back to the reporting tab on the public side of the CASGEM online system, and those reports will be made available. There.
Okay. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Tad, related to this question as well, there are other ways to download data because the CASGEM and Sigma and all groundwater monitoring stations and groundwater elevation measurements are on CNRA Open Data Platform. There's a way to download or extract from that platform, as well as the Sigma Data Viewer, as Tad already mentioned. So there's a couple different ways to do it, in addition to what Tad mentioned in the online system. And if you have questions about how to do that in the other systems, just let us know. We can send a follow-up email. Okay. Next question: would DWR ever consider developing a mobile app for collecting groundwater data so that personnel could collect and import data straight through their phone or tablet while doing their monitoring network work? I think you're reading our mind because that's exactly where we're headed. So releasing this latest version of the online system really was the first step to have a modern user interface for everyone to use in the CASGEM program. But our next step, and that gets us closer to then our next step, which is being able to have a mobile friendly mobile app type of setup. So that is being planned. It's going to take a while, but we're always up for the challenge. And now that we've hit this milestone of getting the online system out the door, we are working towards developing a mobile app, and that goes right into our objectives of increasing CASGEM monitoring, community monitoring. So the more we can make collecting the data and reporting it as easy as possible, the more that I think we're going to be able to build our monitoring community. So that is something that's in the works, and we can provide updates, and we'll likely have another webinar like this when that mobile app is ready for use. Okay. Another question. Downloading a new template was not really clear. How do you get there and get the new template? Tad, could you handle that one?
Yeah, and thank you, Ariel, for navigating to this portion of the CASGEM online system. Yeah, first of all, sorry that wasn't clear, so I'm glad we have time to demo that again for you. So once you're logged into the CASGEM online system, and once you have clicked on the data import tab, you'll see the screen that is being displayed right now. And on the right, you see the add import job page. And here, this is where you would select if the import or in your specific question, the template you're looking for, depending on if you're looking for an elevation reading or a well template, you would select the radio button for the template you want to download. So for instance, in this example, the elevation reading radio button is selected. When the user clicks on the blue download import template button, the system will download the template to your computer, and you can access it from there. And similarly, if you were wanting to download the well import template, you would select the well radio button and then click on the download import template. That will download the well template. So hopefully that answers your question, Raven. If not, please send your follow-up question or your question to the CASGEM@water.ca.gov, and we can help you navigate that.
All right, thank you, Tad. Yeah, and we're getting closer to the end of the queue of questions. So if you do have questions, we have the expert panel here to answer as many questions as we can. We can go and do live demos based on questions. So yeah, please keep the questions coming, and let's make the most of the time we have together. Okay, so the next question we have, I'm in a new role with the city of Santa Barbara and do not have a CASGEM login. The options to sign up are disabled. Will this be enabled in the future, or how can I get a login? Great question. Tad, you want to cover that?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, at the moment that I see that you navigated to the join the program button, a link there, and you see that it's under construction. Yeah, we do plan on having this available in the very near future. And so it will be enabled very soon. And if not, or if you'd like to send an email to the CASGEM@water.ca.gov, we can help you get registered in the system with your new organization.
Thank you, Tad. Okay, another question we have about some of the data upload, and I'll have cover this one, Tad.
Sure.
Do we need to start the new upload template with fresh data, not including old data? We put our new data on the same spreadsheet, or do we put the new data on the same spreadsheet?
Yeah, good question, Raven. I think your question is very specific to your interaction with our Northern Region office. And so I would say if you can follow up with us, we can help you navigate this. Because I think for the time being, the way you've been approaching this is working out well because DWR is assisting with the uploads. But if you were to be uploading the data yourself, you would be populating like a new template with fresh data each time you perform an upload. But there's more to that. Please follow up and we can help you navigate that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tad. All right, so we have another question. This one is a little bit about the transition from Sigma and CASGEM. So I'll tee this one up for Ben Gooding. For clarity, if a well has been imported to Sigma, we are not required to add data to CASGEM, or do we still need to double report?
So correct, you're not required to submit data to CASGEM any longer. And also, just to be clear, once a well is migrated out of CASGEM into the Sigma Portals monitoring network module, data cannot be submitted to that well via CASGEM. So the only place to submit data and the only place that you're required to submit data will be via the monitoring network module.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. All right, another question here. We have data loggers that contain 12 to 24 readings per day. Can this be uploaded? Or if we report only quarterly data on the template forms, can we upload PDFs of the data loggers? It's really interesting. I would agree. When getting higher frequency data, you see all kinds of very interesting patterns and you get a really good sense of the groundwater conditions in and around that area. So that's, again, as mentioned earlier, we're going to be going in that direction of collecting high frequency data. This at DWR, and this system has been built to be able to handle more high frequency data. So I'll turn it over for the specifics on that to Tad.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I'm sure it is really interesting. We love high frequency data. And your question as far as how many readings per day can be uploaded into the system, great question. The answer to that is avoiding me right now, but we can follow up and answer your question there. I do believe we allow a couple of measurements per day. I don't believe it's up to 12 or 24, but that's something that we can revisit. But at a bare minimum, I know for a fact that we can accept daily data. So if that's reasonable, we can definitely digest the daily data and get that data in there rather than providing the data on PDFs. So we can follow up with you, Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Tad. And as Tad mentioned, we are investigating how to be handling the higher frequency stream of data right now and across our entire groundwater monitoring team at DWR. So based on that, we're looking at how our different data systems can handle that, be updated for that. So there's more coming on that in the near future. So if you reach out to us, we can keep you posted on the latest advancements on really high frequency data. Okay. All right, next question. At least 1 to 2 times a day because there are diurnal changes. I think this is more of a comment, but a good comment. Thanks for sending it in. There are changes that could be happening hourly. I mean, there's things that we've seen in 15-minute data when you're looking at stream flow or groundwater levels that you can really see patterns. So yeah, that high frequency data is really interesting. Okay, and then there was a follow-up question to a question that was raised earlier. I think it's a good one about needing a well completion report. So the question is, what would be the minimum information that is needed for adding a new well to the CASGEM program? I believe in order to submit data on a new well, you may at least need to know or have an estimate for well depth and some other parameters. So on that one, then the question goes on, but essentially, what are the minimum required fields for adding a well in CASGEM?
Yeah, great question. And if we can navigate back to the system, thank you, Ariel. As we log in here, we can navigate to the Add New Well page. And I'll pause until we get there. Again, this may take a few minutes to load since our system will load all 46,000 records once the well directory button is selected. But once this page loads, you can click on the Add Well button, the green button there that the cursor is currently hovering over. And once that loads, on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a variety of fields that are required fields. And in this first collapsible section that we'll see here shortly, that will contain the required fields to successfully add a well. The collapsible panes that are below that. So yeah, here we go. So this information you see on the screen currently, as you see in the header there of this section titled required information, this is the information that is required, such as local well name, the coordinate information, a reference point description, along with the elevations of the reference point and ground surface, also the well completion type and well use. And these are the same fields that were required in our previous version of CASGEM, so that hasn't changed. But we've segregated those here in this collapsible section to hopefully make it easier to identify which fields are required. And below, as you see, we have the construction information. These fields are optional. This includes the well completion report number if you happen to have it, which answers part of your question from earlier. And then along with the well depth and adding perforation information if you have that info. And lastly, at the bottom, also optional is the miscellaneous details, where you can add a state well number if you have that, and other descriptions about the well location or comments. But to dial in the exact answer there, it would be the information on the required information collapsible section there.
All right. Thank you, Tad. Okay, let's see, that's the end of the queue questions. So if there's any remaining questions, we have a couple more minutes that we can answer those. So please put any final questions in the question box. And again, if you think of something after this webinar, you can always email us at thatcasgem@water.ca.gov. Hopefully that's been burned into your brains because we've said it about 50 times so far, but that's a great email to send when you have any questions about CASGEM. Okay, let's see, seems like a more of an online system question. Groundwater elevation data report for public seems to be not working. Any insight on that?
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier briefly, the reports are currently, we're currently developing those. We have some reports available now at limited use, but the reports, enhancing the reports, that would be part of our phase 2 release. And we plan on tackling that in 2024, in the near future.
All right, thank you, Tad. Okay, I think with that, we'll close out the last question and answer session. And now we'll just want to close the webinar by really a huge thank you for all of you who attended today. A big shout out to Atlee and the Stantec team for helping us put this webinar on, and then our entire EWR and CASGEM team for all the hard work over the years to get the new operating system out on the street and being used. Just really thanks for the hard work on that. And we know that you all in the groundwater monitoring community are doing tremendous work, and anytime something changes, it can be unsettling, and we know that. And I really just encourage you to reach out. So when in doubt, reach out. We have a great team that can take questions, walk you through this, and then also the user guides that are available are going to be really helpful. But we know that there's probably going to be bumps in the road, and so please don't hesitate to reach out when you come to an obstacle or hurdle in using the new system. We're here and ready to help you through it. And then finally, just as it relates to overall groundwater monitoring, I want to thank you all on behalf of the CASGEM team, because without you all as the boots on the ground and data collectors and submitters, we really have nothing. And the information you collect is very important, as you know, for your local management and with the communities and everyone that relies on groundwater in your areas. And it's really important information that you're collecting. It's really important to be able to roll that information up and see how things are happening at regional or statewide levels. So we just really appreciate all the work you've done over the many years of the CASGEM program, and then the new Sigma monitoring that's going on that's related, and really look forward to working with you all as we move forward in the next chapter of CASGEM and continuing to build out California's statewide groundwater elevation monitoring network. So with that, just a couple things at the end. Wanted to mention that the recording today will be posted on that link you see in the middle of the screen here on the CASGEM webpage. So you can rewatch it as you need to. And then please take the survey that will be sent out here. And that will really help us improve and make sure that we're providing future webinars and information as best as we can. It's for the benefit of you and others. So please take the survey, and then again, reach out to us with questions you have as you go. All right, well, have a great rest of the day, and thank you very much.